everyone, welcome to another Music Talk Tuesday, and today I am going to be addressing a couple of songs, and a couple, I mean two couples since I'm discussing 4 songs, about the topic of growing up. So right out of the gate, let me discuss Puff the Magic Dragon by Peter, Paul, and Mary. Now you might be wondering, how in any way does a dragon named Puff have anything to do with growing up and becoming an adult and eventually maybe growing old? Well, the interesting thing about this song is that it addresses things in a context of childhood and eventually sort of losing that childhood. For example, Puff within the song is supposed to sort of represent a toy that the child within the song plays with. But eventually the child grows up and eventually forgets about Puff. And due to Puff getting old himself, he eventually becomes replaced by other toys that children end up playing with. I think this reflects onto something that's very interesting when it comes to sort of growing up. This idea of not being able to sort of reclaim childhood, the idea of not being able to go back to those kinds of happy times, because a part of growing up is that things eventually change, and sometimes the people that did exist within your childhood are no longer a part of your life later on. And I think that's just something that's just so powerful, and I think resonates with a lot of people. It showcases the song in a very touching as well as in a very sad kind of way. You do feel sort of the pain that Puff is sort of experiencing. You know, he wants to cry out for someone to, you know, sort of love and accept him, but there's nobody that really answers him, because the person that he really wants to have in his life is no longer there. And the song also has a very kind of poetic touch, especially with the lyrics. And again, it just sort of brings up this sort of hidden reality of, you know, not being able to go back to childhood and not being able to experience childhood again. And realizing that that part of life is eventually over and won't be reclaimed. And I think that's just something that's very, very meaningful and has a lot of impact. And the way the song addresses it is, I think, in a very mature and also sort of innocent way. And overall, I think it's a good way of talking about this notion of growing up and what it ultimately means, and the sort of turmoil that comes with that, because things don't end up being as simple as they were when you were a child, because as you eventually grow up, there's more responsibilities and more obligations, there's more pressures, and, you know, when you eventually grow old, you can't sort of reclaim any youth in the sense of what you're physically capable of and what you might be intellectually capable of. You know, all of that just ends up sort of fading away. And I think this song really does reflect onto this idea. Some people have mentioned the fact that this song mentions, Puff the Magic Dragon, so therefore that must mean it has something to do with drugs or something like that. I personally don't think that's the case as far as the way I see the song. I mean, some people can interpret it however they want, but I don't think that's really the heart of the song, at least when I listen to it from an instrumental as well as lyrical perspective. I mean, if you listen to the lyrics, they really don't really reference it directly, so I really can't say. But to me, this song is definitely more about this notion of growing up as opposed to whatever connotations there are to possibly drugs. I don't know. But yeah, regardless, I think that's ultimately all I can say about that song. Moving on now to another song called Old Man by Neil Young. Unlike the previous song, Puff the Magic Dragon, that takes a really sad and sort of somber approach, this song has a little bit more of a haunting element to it. It feels like, something is kind of watching you over your shoulder, even though you can't see it, or, you just kind of feel its presence, though. You can kind of feel your older self haunting you in a way. Just by, just its simple guitar strings, I mean, it already takes you to that kind of scenario. But basically, the song addresses also growing up in a very interesting and different way than the previous song. Because basically the narrator is telling the old man, that is really part of the title, like, I'm a lot like, he's basically saying, I'm a lot like how you were. Basically saying that the old man was once like me, so to speak. And as the narrator is growing up, he suddenly realizes that, there are similar, desires and aspirations that he has sort of for himself. And he sort of brings up this notion, old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you. Even though we differ in age, I still reflect onto things that you may relate to. But even though there is this kind of dual comparison, I still feel like it is addressing this notion of growing up, because really, even though the narrator doesn't say it so much directly, the narrator knows that eventually he's going to become the old man, in a similar way as to how he says, I'm a lot like you were. He realizes that that's going to be his destiny, and that's really on the path that he is heading towards to. And as he's kind of, growing up, he realizes the commonality he has with sort of the old man. And in a sense, that kind of addresses this aspect of growing up. As older you get, the more you can maybe relate to the older generations or previous generation. And in doing so, you sort of become the older generation, so to speak, later on. And I think it has this inevitability factor, though, to it, by the fact that it just has this haunting element to it. Just, this idea of, I'm a lot like how you were. In other words, I'm going to eventually become who you are now. And, you were once young, like me, and I and I one day will become old like you. So it is really trying to kind of address this, I think, um, in sort of a very non kind of specific way, because it doesn't really directly address getting older so much as it really hints into the concept and the idea, especially with the comparison of the old man and the narrator, and how eventually, you know, the older generation will resemble the growing older generation, so to speak. Um, and there's a lot in which um, can result in between uh, different generations sort of relating to one another, and in doing so, growing older and sort of becoming that older generation. So I think it just brings up a bunch of interesting ideas, and um, you can interpret the song however you wish, because again, it is a little bit more general, and its lyrics aren't really all too specific, um, or filled with analogy like Puff the Magic Dragon. But at the same time, there is a lot of there's just a lot of, I think, uh, importance to the idea of, as you grow up, you realize how much more you have in common with the older generation, and in doing so, you eventually become the older generation. But yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say about that song. Moving on now to the second to last song that I wanted to discuss on this list. And that is 100 Years by Five for Fighting. Oh yes, I really enjoy this song. This song is very, not only touching, but there's a certain amount of, I think, inspiration to it that kind of makes you realize the sort of impact that growing up has. So basically the song sort of reflects onto, somebody, growing up. At one moment they're 15, another they're 20 something, at one point they're in their 40s, in their 50s, it just addresses these different periods of time within somebody's existence, and hence goes in sort of a linear pattern of eventually growing up. And basically it has this tone of of weight. The song really does make you feel sort of the importance of what it's saying, because I think it really is trying to showcase to people how, how important life is, and how important, these stages are within your life as you're growing up, how it's important to cherish all of those stages and appreciate growing up, and appreciating the fact that you are within this moment in time. And again, there's just this beauty, and there's just this awe to it, but at the same time there's also this idea of, you're never going to get it back. You're always going to be moving forward. There is no return. There's only, the path. There's only a path to walk on straight ahead. There's no turning back the clock. And I think there is just such an importance to this, and it really addresses it, I think, really well in this song, and that's why I find it to be so enjoyable and to be so engaging, and very interesting to listen to. So I think it's definitely worth a recommendation if you are interested in that kind of way in which that this particular topic that I'm discussing is addressed. Last song, Forever Young by Rod Stewart. Oh yes. Man, does this song lift you up, man. It's like it really does make you think, that growing up isn't really a bad thing. It's not designed to be this really downtrodden, um, bad experience. It's supposed to be something that, you growing up brings out all of the things that have happened within the past. And with the past that you've experienced, you sort of take that with you. Because in the song, basically, the narrator says to the person that he's sort of speaking to take all of the goodness that you've experienced in your youth, all of the, all of the great things that you have to offer, and apply it to the now, apply it to the present. And in doing so, you will always be really forever young. You will always carry that spirit with you. And I think that's a very interesting way of putting it, and I think there is a lot of truth to that. I think maintaining a certain level of positivity and, realizing that, yeah, I'm not going to get what I had back, but at the same time, moving forward, I'm going to take what I've had within the past and try to make something positive and do something good. And I think that's really something telling, and I think that's something that's really different compared to a lot of the other songs that I've addressed on this list that are kind of a little bit more on the darker side. This one is a little bit more uplifting and a little bit more upbeat and positive, and somewhat more happy-go-lucky than the previous songs. But at the same time, I think there is some truth in a lot of what all of these songs have to say. Again, I think there is a lot of positive to be had from growing up, and there's also negative connotations to it as well. Haunting connotations, inspirational ideas. But overall, it is all a part of everybody's life, and I think it's definitely an interesting topic to reflect onto within a song, because I think a song can say a whole lot about what it means to grow up. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about this song and for this particular list. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Unfortunately, I am not going to be available to do videos after today for maybe some time because I'm going to be away on Wednesday. So I will probably have to hold off Wednesday's video for Thursday. And then I will make Thursday's and Wednesday's video on Thursday. Yeah, I think that's really ultimately, though, all I can say, but I will try to get them all uploaded. It's just really hard to do a video every single day. But I have other obligations and things that I need to do tomorrow, so I won't be available. But I will upload all of the videos that need to be uploaded. It's just that it won't be tomorrow, it will be Thursday. But until next time, everybody,